The Vanguard sliced through the quiet expanse of space, its hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Captain Alera Marik stood at the viewport, her gaze fixed on the swirling indigo nebula ahead, the astral drift. It marked the edge of known space, a place where no ship from the Alliance had ever ventured beyond. Now it was their turn. "We're approaching the boundary, Captain." Commander Kalen Voss's voice came from behind her, precise and even as always. Marik nodded but didn't turn. Her hands tightened behind her back as a swell of anticipation filled her chest. Beyond this line lay the unknown, the frontier they'd been sent to explore. After years of planning, construction, and preparation, the Vanguard was about to fulfill its purpose. The promise of discovery, of mystery, was just beyond that shimmering nebula. But Marik also knew that dangers would come with it. "Bring us out of warp, just short of the nebula's edge," she ordered. "Aye, Captain," Voss replied. She turned to face the bridge as the ship gently decelerated. The hum of the warp core settled into a lower, steady rhythm, and the stars outside the viewport became clear points of light once more. The Vanguard's crew worked quietly, each at their stations, fully aware of the significance of this moment. To them, this wasn't just a routine mission, it was the beginning of an era of exploration. Marik let her gaze sweep across the bridge. Voss stood at his tactical station, ever calm, the light from his console casting a faint glow on the implant at his temple. Dr. Kira Orlis, though off duty, had appeared, leaning casually against the railing with a sharp look of curiosity in her eyes. And at the navigation console, Ensign Tori Lenka's fingers danced across the interface, her excitement palpable. A soft chime echoed through the bridge. "We've dropped out of warp, Captain," Lenka announced, her betazoid empathy giving her an extra edge of calm despite her evident enthusiasm. "Nebula is ahead at 0.2 light-years." Marik took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the unknown settle around her. "Commander Voss, initiate long-range scans." Voss's hands moved fluidly across his console, activating long-range sensors now. The seconds ticked by as the Vanguard's powerful scanners began to probe the nebula, reaching into the swirling mists to detect anything beyond its surface. The tension on the bridge grew with each passing moment, the quiet hum of the ship the only sound. Voss straightened slightly. "Preliminary readings are coming in, Captain." His brow furrowed, a rare display of emotion. "I'm picking up some unusual energy signatures inside the nebula. The patterns are erratic." How? Marik stepped forward, her focus intensifying. "It's hard to pinpoint," Voss continued. "The energy is fluctuating at levels inconsistent with any known natural phenomenon. It's almost as if—" He stopped, tapping a command on his console. "As if something inside the nebula is distorting the readings. There are patterns, but they're incomplete." Marik moved closer to his station, her eyes narrowing. "Could it be interference from the nebula's gases?" "Possible," Voss acknowledged, "but unlikely. I've never seen anything like this." The nebula before them loomed larger, its roiling clouds of gas and dust almost alive, shifting and pulsing as if something deeper within was calling out to them. Marik felt a pull, a sense that whatever lay beyond was more than just another discovery. It was something significant. "Captain," Lenka interrupted, her voice more serious now, "there's something else. I'm detecting movement, something small, moving within the nebula." Marik's gaze snapped to her. "Movement? Is it a ship?" "I don't think so," Lenka replied, her hands flying over the console. "It's moving erratically, and it's fast, too fast to be any vessel I know of." A long, tense silence filled the bridge. "Put it on the screen," Marik ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, the swirling colors of the nebula filling the display. For a moment, nothing seemed to change, but then a faint, almost imperceptible flash of light appeared, there, deep within the churning clouds. "There!" Lenka pointed. "It's faint, but it's moving." Marik's heart quickened. They were seeing something new. "Is it emitting any signals?" Dr. Orlis asked, stepping forward. Voss shook his head. "None that we can detect. Whatever it is, it's not communicating." Marik watched the strange, darting light as it moved through the nebula. The temptation to follow it surged within her, but caution held her back. This was their first mission, first contact with the unknown. They couldn't afford to be reckless. "Can we get a closer look without entering the nebula?" she asked. "We could launch a probe," Voss suggested. It would allow us to gather more detailed readings without risking the ship. Do it, Marik ordered. Within seconds, a small drone probe launched from the Vanguard and streaked toward the nebula, disappearing into the swirling mass. On the bridge, the crew watched as the feed from the probe came through, flickering and distorted at first, but slowly stabilizing. The view screen now showed the interior of the nebula up close, turbulent, chaotic, and filled with dense clouds of ionized gas. There, Lenka whispered again, and the light reappeared, closer this time. The probe's sensors sharpened the image, revealing something moving through the fog, its form unclear but undeniably fast and deliberate. "What the hell is that?" Orlis muttered. The object, whatever it was, darted again, vanishing deeper into the nebula, as if aware of the probe's presence. But this time, it left something behind. A faint ripple, barely visible to the naked eye, pulsed through the gas clouds in its wake. "Captain," Voss said suddenly, his voice tight. "There's another energy spike, but this time it's much larger. Something's happening in the nebula. The energy patterns are intensifying." On the screen, the probe's sensors went wild, the readings fluctuating wildly as a massive surge of energy rippled outward, sending shockwaves through the dense gas clouds. The light vanished, but something bigger, something deeper within the nebula, was stirring. "We've lost visual," Lenka said, her voice tense now. The probe's feed just went dark. Marik's jaw clenched. "Can we retrieve it?" "No, Captain," Voss replied, his eyes fixed on his console. "The probe has been destroyed." For a moment, the bridge fell silent. Then, without warning, an alarm blared. "Energy surge, directly toward us," Voss called out, his voice raised for the first time. "It's fast! Closing in! Shields up! Evasive maneuvers!" Marik shouted. The Vanguard lurched as the engines fired, pulling the ship into a sharp arc away from the nebula. On the view screen, the outer edges of the nebula began to distort, as if being pulled by some invisible force. Then, the energy surge hit. A wave of shimmering light exploded outward, brushing past the ship's shields and sending a shockwave reverberating through the hull. "Shields holding," Voss reported, his voice tense but controlled. But that was no ordinary anomaly. Marik's mind raced. They were barely minutes into the frontier, and already they had encountered something extraordinary, and something dangerous. "What's the status of the nebula?" she asked. Voss hesitated. "It's changed. The energy readings are increasing exponentially. Whatever we encountered in there, it's still active." Marik turned back to the viewport. The nebula was shifting, transforming before their eyes. Whatever was hidden within it, whatever had caused this disturbance, it wasn't done with them yet. "Prepare for full analysis," Marik said, her voice steady, even as her pulse raced. "We're not turning back now." As the Vanguard braced itself for whatever was to come, Marik knew this was only the beginning. The edge of infinity lay before them, and it was waiting. The nebula loomed large, its swirling clouds of gas and energy now pulsating with an eerie rhythm that made even the most seasoned officers on the Vanguard uneasy. The crew was still reeling from the sudden energy surge that had nearly shaken them apart, but there was no sign of retreat. Not with Captain Alera Marik at the helm. "We've stabilized the shields, Captain." Lieutenant Zora Callan's calm, measured voice cut through the tension on the bridge. The Zyntari engineer was already tapping away at her console, analyzing the ship's systems. "No lasting damage, but we won't be able to take many more hits like that." Marik gave a curt nod, her eyes never leaving the view screen. The nebula was still swirling ahead, its once muted colors now brightening, as if something deep within was waking up. Whatever it was unlike anything they had encountered before. "Can we get any clearer readings?" Marik asked. Her tone clipped but controlled. Commander Voss glanced at his console, frustration briefly flashing in his usually calm eyes. "Not with the nebula's interference. Our sensors are struggling to penetrate the energy field. But from what I can gather, the source of the energy is deep within the nebula, and it's increasing, rapidly." Marik's jaw tightened. "Can we pinpoint the source?" "Not yet," Voss replied, his fingers flying across the controls. "But the readings suggest it's not a natural phenomenon." That was what she feared. Natural anomalies were one thing, but this felt deliberate, controlled, even sentient. The thought sent a chill down her spine. "Captain, I'm detecting fluctuations in the nebula's gravitational field," Ensign Tori Lenka interjected, her youthful voice betraying the tension she was trying to suppress. "It's almost as if it's drawing us in." Marik glanced at the Betazoid ensign. Lenka's empathy was a valuable asset in situations like these. "Are you sensing anything?" Lenka's brow furrowed as she closed her eyes, focusing. "There's something. It's faint, but I feel a presence. It's not clear, but there's a sense of awareness, of intent." Her eyes snapped open, wide with uncertainty. "It's watching us." Marik turned sharply to Voss. "Prepare to launch a second probe. We need more data before we move in any further." "Aye, Captain." Voss replied without hesitation. "We'll launch a heavier probe, something more resilient." Seconds later, the bridge watched as another probe launched from the Vanguard, streaking toward the edge of the nebula. The tension was palpable as the viewscreen displayed the probe's path. This time, the probe was equipped with a more advanced shielding system designed to withstand intense energy fields. Marik hoped it would be enough. "Probe entering the nebula now," Voss reported, his voice steady. The viewscreen flickered, and the familiar swirling clouds of the nebula filled the display. The probe's sensors immediately went to work, scanning everything it encountered. For a moment, the crew watched in silence as the probe delved deeper into the abyss. Suddenly, the screen shifted. The probe had picked up something, a faint glow deep within the mists. "There!" Lenka pointed, her voice edged with excitement. "The energy source." On the viewscreen, the glow intensified, growing larger as the probe closed in. It was like a pulsing heartbeat, emanating waves of energy that seemed to warp the very fabric of the nebula around it. But as the probe got closer, the light flickered, and a strange pattern emerged, one that Marik didn't immediately recognize. "What is that?" she muttered under her breath. Kira Orlis, who had been silently observing from the side, stepped forward, her sharp gaze fixed on the screen. "That pattern looks familiar. It's like an artificial construct." Marik's eyes narrowed. "You think it's some kind of device?" Orlis shrugged. "It could be. I've seen similar energy patterns in ancient artifacts, but nothing on this scale. Whatever it's not natural." Voss's console beeped sharply. "Captain, I'm detecting a secondary energy spike. It's coming from directly beneath the source." "Another surge?" Marik asked, her focus intensifying. "No," Voss said, frowning at the readings. "This is different. It's controlled, directed, almost like it's responding to us." The words hung in the air, and a tense silence fell over the bridge. "Responding to us." Marik felt a knot tighten in her chest. This wasn't just an anomaly. They were being watched, maybe even tested. Before Marik could respond, the probe's feed cut out, the screen going dark. "Probe's down," Voss said, his voice strained. "Whatever's in there, it's protecting itself." Marik clenched her jaw, her mind racing. The crew had been sent to explore the frontier, to push the limits of human understanding, but this was more than she had bargained for. Still, the lure of discovery was strong. If there was an intelligent force out there, this could be their first true contact with an unknown civilization. A civilization potentially far more advanced than their own. "We need to know what we're dealing with," she said, her voice low but firm. "Commander, prepare a shuttle. I'm going in." Voss turned sharply to face her, his brow furrowed. "Captain, that's highly inadvisable. We still don't know what we're facing." "I understand the risks," Marik replied, her eyes locking with his. "But we can't just sit out here in the dark. We need answers, and we're not going to get them from out here." For a moment, Voss hesitated, his enhanced mind clearly weighing the options. Then he nodded. "Understood. I'll lead the away team." "No," Marik said quickly. "I need you here. You're the best person to manage the situation if things go sideways. I'll lead the mission. Dr. Orlis, you're with me." Orlis's eyes lit up with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Wouldn't miss it." "Lieutenant Callan, prep the shuttle," Marik ordered. "We leave in 5. As the crew set about preparing for the mission, Marik couldn't shake the sense that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. Whatever was in that nebula wasn't just another anomaly. It was alive, aware of their presence, and it had the power to manipulate the very fabric of space around it. As Marik made her way to the shuttle bay, her heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and fear. She had spent her life seeking the unknown, driven by a desire to explore and understand the universe. But now, staring into the swirling void of the nebula, she realized that some mysteries might be more dangerous than even she had imagined. Minutes later, the shuttle was ready. The bay doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space and the churning clouds of the nebula ahead. Marik stepped aboard, followed by Orlis and a pair of security officers. "Ready when you are, Captain," Orlis said, strapping into her seat. Marik settled into the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls. She glanced once more at the nebula, feeling its presence more keenly now, like a predator lurking just out of sight. "Engage," she ordered, and the shuttle shot forward, racing toward the heart of the nebula and into the unknown. As the shuttle plunged into the swirling mists, the Vanguard slowly faded from view, swallowed by the roiling clouds. The light within the nebula flickered once more, growing brighter as the shuttle descended deeper. Marik's pulse quickened, her mind racing with questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. What lay at the heart of this nebula? What force had destroyed their probe? And most importantly, were they truly ready for what they were about to find? The shuttle hurtled toward the pulsing light, and Marik knew, without a doubt, that their mission had just entered its most dangerous phase.